Hi everyone, welcome. We're out here at my outdoor worm bag, and as you can see, if you were with me a couple check-ins ago, we had a similar thing happen over here where some little visitor tried to reach their little arms down in here and pull out some stuff that they could probably smell portions of the previous feeding. Or who knows, maybe they're after the worms. Well, good thing that the worms are pretty well protected because they were able to retrieve some castings material, obviously, a little bit of corn cob, some of the bedding we used recently, some of these maple seeds, and well, they probably didn't get much. Maybe they got a couple wormies, and good for them. They certainly put in a good effort, so they deserved it, but I'm glad they weren't able to get more than they got. If it was in fact worms that they were after, that's what they got. But like we did recently, I've put my little information board together on a disposable piece of paper rather than bringing my little green board out here, just to convey some of the current information about the system. Yeah, I got a little thing on the back too. So we're now at day 172, and stuff we talked about previously already was the estimated population in here, about 3,500. It's been 10 days since our last check-in. That last check-in was feeding number 13, and today we're going to be giving them a nice generous portion to make feeding number 14. And my little extra comment back here is really pertaining to a camera setting that I'm testing out here, just to remind myself to ask for feedback on what people think in terms of the difference in appearance. I don't even know what the difference in appearance is going to be yet, because it's a setting that I've never tried. Normally I run my action camera with the company's default color profile setting, whatever that means, and I guess this so-called flat color profile is supposed to provide a little extra flexibility in the video editor afterwards during post-production. So I'm just curious to see if that might help us achieve a slightly better image quality in my videos. If so, then I'll scrap using the GoPro color and I'll just go with that flat color profile from now on. Alright, so the last few check-ins actually were very bedding focused. It was only the last check-in when we sort of started putting the focus back on not so much the bedding but the food. So we did give what I thought was at that time a pretty generous portion. And what I've got lined up for them today is also a relatively large portion, but then again, when I think about the population size, I don't want to leave these little wormies on here. I want to get them back in the container. That's funny, they're kind of nibbling through this fairly new top that we fashioned for these little guys, and that's really what it's there for. It's just made of a material that they're going to be able to consume at their leisure, so I don't really have any expectations of it being around for a very long time. So let me see if I can remember how things went. There was a visit a couple times ago. Last time we didn't have to do it, but 2 visits ago I came in here with my garden hose because things did seem pretty dry, and we were super generous. We went almost overboard with the dampening of the materials in here. And with that wooden covering, that wooden board on top, you don't really get a lot of moisture loss through evaporation through the top surface. So I'm happy to report that things look really nice in here, hanging on to their moisture quite nicely. Here's another piece of corn cob. Maybe it's the same one we had before. No, the one we had before was very dry. This is one that's from down in the bed where it's nice and damp. So now the focus over the past few check-ins has been bedding. And like I said, the last one is where we kind of started focusing back on generous food. But previously there was like a whole bunch of these applied during one of the feedings, and I had 2 other applications of generous bedding, but those were all paper, shredded paper. And today, you know, I didn't even come prepared with bedding. I just figured maybe we would let it ride, you know, because I mean, at this age, I'm really not feeling like I'm approaching the finish line yet with this system. I normally go a little bit longer out here than I do with my indoor bins, so I don't want to run out of room, and they're not going to be hurting for bedding either, so that's not of concern either if we skip today and we just give them food. The food is something I've been doling out gradually to my other systems, but I don't think these guys have received any yet. I could be mistaken, but I've been oops. Okay. Yeah, I've been tapping into my secret stash of pumpkin that I had put away last season after the Halloween jack-o'-lanterns were done being used as decorations in front of everyone's homes, and people that I knew that had one and they knew that I'd be interested in it, were offered to me, so I ended up dragging home a few pumpkins. And I even held on to a whole bunch of the material in my freezer, the outdoor freezer in the garage, which kind of put it out of sight, making me almost forget that it was there. I mean, I always knew it was there, but every time I would come into my come up to my kitchen to get scraps for a worm bin feeding, it would never really occur to me to go outside to get anything. Just figured, hey, it's all right here. Why would I need to do anything else? Didn't even occur to me. But now I really want to make some room in that outdoor freezer, and since there's more pumpkin on the way, we're now in mid-September, so we're only about a month and a half away from Halloween, after which the jack-o'-lanterns will all become available as worm food again. So by that time I hope to deplete what I've got left. I don't have that much more left, but every now and then I just have to remind myself to go out to the outdoor freezer and grab another bag of it to try to work my way down to zero. Alright, so we've already seen a couple of the scraps. I think it came from my mom's place. She sent over some stuff, a pretty good bag of stuff, and this would be corn husk, even some of the corn silk. That was a good part of what they received last time, and I could see that maybe taking a little longer. It seems like a tougher material. It's just offhand I can't remember what else was included in that last feeding. It was just a variety of stuff, but there was a lot of this, and it doesn't seem like the worms are shy about getting right into it. Some of it seemed like it had a good amount of worm activity going on. We've already bumped into a couple corn cobs, and I do have a few more of those for them today as well. The pumpkin that I bought out for them at first seemed like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be giving them that much. And I was like, yeah, why not? And then I said, why don't we even give them more? So I added a few corn cobs too. So today's feeding is pretty generous. It's all frozen stuff, so hopefully that freezing and then subsequent thawing of the material aids in its gradual breakdown. It is nice to, grab a hunk of this stuff and just see worms all throughout it. I wasn't quite sure what to do with that, because like when I buy corn, the store where I buy it, the farmer's market, they have a bucket there, or not a bucket, a trash pail. So you could pretty much leave all of the corn husks there and bring home only the corn cob. So it almost seems like, why not? Then after the fact you kind of realize, hey, it could have been worm food, free worm food. But I'm always in pretty much overload mode anyway, because besides my own supply of kitchen scraps for the worms, I'm on a pretty regular basis also composting almost all of my mom's compostable materials too. Yeah, these avocados, they go quite a way back now. I mean, if this is feeding number 14, I think these things went in at feeding number 3 or 4, pretty early on in the game. So they're working it. They're in there. There was a few of these too, and I think some of them were already pretty much breaking apart. That one too was pretty much falling apart too. Is this the seed from the avocado? I think it might be. Every time I do that, I feel like I'm going to use my nail to puncture the glove, and then the glove will become trash, so I gotta resist the urge to do things like that. I'm noticing some of these leaves that were put in here as bedding recently are also a little bit dry. Alright, now the little bit of sunlight streaming in here through the leaves of the tree above me are going to be a good test of how this camera's performing. That's where I usually feel like a little bit of bright light streaming into the scene suddenly changes the exposure, and it takes all the stuff that's already kind of dimmed down here and makes it even harder to see, because now the camera's trying to expose for all the bright stuff in the scene, and all the interesting stuff that we want to see, which is all dark and dim, goes black. So that's why I usually try to shoot in the shade, try to get a good flat light source to work under here. But I think we've made a substantial hole here, one big enough to fit today's feeding in. We're going to skip on adding bedding. We're just going to drop in the food, and then we'll pretty much be done here. Let's use the old foods as a foundation for the new food though. Drop all that stuff in there before I forget to return it to the middle, and then we can get the bag. It's a pretty good hunk of stuff, and it might still be pretty much frozen into a single hunk. So I don't even know if, yeah, this stuff luckily breaks apart pretty easily. I guess it was frozen while it was still pretty dry. I guess if it had started getting kind of rotted and gooey and damp, then that extra moisture would have caused the stuff to really lock together a lot harder in the freezing process. But I guess it was all put away fairly fresh and dry and froze pretty fast, so it didn't allow the materials to attach to each other. So I was able to break it all apart pretty good. I don't think this stuff's going to last, but it's kind of nice. It's going to bring extra moisture with it, because if you do let this stuff sit around after it's been thawing for a while, you'll see it ends up sitting in a big puddle of its own juices. So that's going to definitely kick off a good amount of moisture. These things, probably none at all. That's fine too. All right, let's get these little guys covered up so they can get back to work for us. Times like this, I do kind of don't mind using this as an opportunity just to blend all the materials together. Certain places you find concentrations of some sort of bedding that was applied who knows how long ago. The leaves, I'm trying to remember, I think the leaves were actually part of the most recent feeding. I just bought my supply of leaves from the wormery up here. Since the box was only about halfway full, I thought I would just deplete that supply when we last fed here, and then I just went and visited my big bag of collected leaves from last autumn where I restock. But today, without bedding, I think they're going to be just fine. You can really see how the level in this system is coming up pretty close to the rim. And even when I was excavating the hole, I was finding myself so close to the rim on the, you know, on the outer rim of the crater that I really couldn't have even dug any deeper if I wanted to. Not that I could have, but that is a restricting, you know, limiting factor in terms of what you can do. If you come right up to the top edge, you know, if you do anything, you're almost risking spilling stuff. And that's usually what I'm trying to avoid. So I do want to allow a little bit of time for all this bedding to start settling so we have more space in here before we add more bedding. And I don't think that they're going to be hurting for it at all, because there's leftovers of it all over the place. I mean, these things clearly still showing up as leftovers. One thing I didn't really notice though was any of the leaf bag or newspaper bedding. So is it possible that they've done away with it? It was a few feedings ago. Last time it was leaves. The time previous, I think it was, I don't know if you call these leaves, these seeds. So the paper does go back a couple, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mixing up the order of it too. But it's nice to see that, you know, some of the bedding you applied recently is showing no signs of leftovers. But I think we're done here. Let me grab the coverings. We'll get these guys covered up and put away, and then they can get back to work. It's so nice to see how the moisture level remains so perfect in here. You know, you would think that a bag that's made out of fabric would allow for, you know, a lot of moisture loss, and it probably does to a certain point, but the top surface being protected this way really keeps it comfortable and steady, you know, so you don't get these drastic swings of dampness and moisture concentration. So hopefully the worms enjoy it. It certainly seems to me like a comfortable place to live if I was a worm. But I got a few things I've got to take care of in terms of cleaning up and putting away, but at this point I'm not going to keep you around for that because that stuff's boring. Before I go though, let me really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, before you go, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up. That's always very much appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.